All right, ready to dive into something. Big energy today. Innovation. The future of the planet, really.
I'm ready.
We're talking youth activism,
Love it.
the fight against climate change. Specifically, these incredible climate sisters. You familiar with the book Climate Sisters, Resisting Ecocide?
Absolutely, I am. It's really remarkable, the sheer number of young women who are part of this movement.
Right.
And it's not just the numbers, it's the unique challenges they're up against
Yeah.
and the really creative ways they're tackling them, you know?
Totally. It's like they're not just inheriting this mess, they're facing it head on. Like, nope, not going to happen on our watch.
Yeah.
So before we get into the heart of their stories, why focus on young women specifically?
That's a great question. I think it's vital to acknowledge that climate change, while it affects all of us, the burdens, they're not shared equally.
Right.
When you think about it, in many parts of the world, women are the ones dealing with, like, the access to water and food,
It's true.
making sure their families are safe and taken care of. Often, they're the first responders when disaster strikes.
Right. So they're not just worried about the future, they're living with the consequences now.
Precisely. And that experience, it translates into this fierce urgency,
Of course.
which you see throughout their activism. It's really interesting to consider historical parallels, like think about the civil rights movement,
Yeah.
or even the push for stricter gun control. There's something about young people.
Yeah.
They see the world with such clear eyes,
It's true, yeah.
and they demand better.
It's like they're looking around going, wait, this is messed up. You know, we're not just going to stand here and watch this happen.
Exactly, and they're not. They're drawing inspiration from the past, but forging their own path.
And what a path it is.
Mhm.
It's this incredible mix of like old school activism, but then you've got cutting edge technology.
Right. They're using every tool at their disposal.
Okay, so let's meet some of these climate sisters. Huh?
Nuts.
I was really drawn to Sara Gonzalez from Costa Rica. She was only 24. This is back during the lead up to COP25. And she was already coordinating events, advocating for children's rights within this whole climate action scene.
It's amazing. And what really struck me about Sarah's story is her realization that for kids, climate change isn't some far-off problem, you know? It's their life. She said something on social media that stuck with me. She said, children are the most vulnerable to climate change. Right now, every single child on this planet is exposed to at least one climate impact.
Wow. It's easy to think long term, but when you put it like that, the urgency is just,
Palpable.
yes.
And you feel that same urgency with Ineza Umuhoza Grace.
Okay.
She's an environmental engineer and the founder of the Green Fighter, based in Rwanda.
Okay.
And Rwanda, you know, often gets praise for its environmental policies.
Really? They're considered pretty progressive, huh?
They are. So it's not about starting from scratch. It's more nuanced than that. She talks about navigating this rapidly modernizing society. And even with Rwanda's green reputation, she still sees this gap in knowledge among young people.
Wow. So how do those policies play out in everyday life? I mean, Rwanda's one thing, but how does Ineza's work fit into that? It's like she's trying to rebuild those connections to traditional sustainable values, the ones that might be getting lost with all this modernization.
It's a really important point you raise because it shows that even when a country seems to be on the right path, right? It's never over. The work continues. Education, awareness, making sure those policies are equitable, effective. It's ongoing.
For sure. Okay, complete shifting gears here. Let's head over to Ecuador.
Okay.
We got to talk about Helena Gualinga.
Oh, I love Helena Gualinga.
Her story, it always pulls me back, makes me think big picture. She brings this really powerful indigenous perspective, right?
Absolutely.
Emphasizing how interconnected humanity and nature really are.
It's such a critical reminder that for so many indigenous communities, this isn't some abstract thing, you know.
It's their life.
It's a matter of survival. They're on the front lines defending their land, their way of life.
It's true.
From this very real and present danger of ecocide.
And she's not afraid to challenge the usual ways of thinking. Like we always hear, green energy is the solution. But she's asking some tough questions about that whole narrative.
It's not as simple as swapping out fossil fuels, right? It's bigger than that. It's about making sure this transition doesn't just repeat the harmful patterns of the past, respecting indigenous land rights,
Absolutely.
incorporating their knowledge,
Yeah.
making sure they have a seat at the table when decisions are made.
It's about making sure green solutions are actually just equitable for everyone.
100%.
And that's what I love about this concept she talks about. Kasak Sacha. the living forest.
Oh, it's such a beautiful concept.
It really is.
And it really forces us to confront how we think about nature.
Yes.
It's not about us protecting the environment over there.
Right.
It's recognizing that we're a part of it. What happens to the forest happens to us.
It's a level of interconnectedness I think a lot of us are just starting to wrap our heads around.
I agree.
Speaking of different approaches, Nozinhle Gumede from Zimbabwe. Wow.
Oh, she's fantastic.
Mind blown.
Her work with Climate Live,
Yes.
it's brilliant.
It's incredible.
Using music and art to get people engaged with climate action.
It's amazing.
So smart.
It's like she's found this way to translate this really complex, often overwhelming issue
Right.
into something that just like hits you in the feels.
Exactly. Breaks down those barriers, makes it accessible, fun.
Empowering.
Yes. There's a quote, she said, the climate change space has all this technical language, right? So
Sure.
there's this information gap. But if we approach people with music, it's easier to convey the message, you know?
Totally.
It's about finding that common ground.
It's universal music.
Yes.
Okay, one more climate sister before we move on. I have to know. Vanessa Hauc from Peru. Her story just screams passion project.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk about a career pivot.
Right.
She was hosting children's dance shows and then became an Emmy-winning climate journalist
Wow.
and co-founded Sachamama.
That's incredible.
Clearly knows how to engage an audience, right?
She does.
It's like she took this passion for storytelling
Yeah.
and was like, all right, how can I use this to make a difference? And the way she talks about the power of narrative, to connect people to the human side of all of this.
It's not just facts and figures, right?
Right.
It's about making people feel something, helping them understand how this impacts real people's lives, in really real ways.
In really real ways.
Yeah. And she's doing amazing work, especially within the Latinx community.
Okay, so we've gone from the rainforests in Costa Rica to Rwanda to the indigenous territories of Ecuador, the music scene in Zimbabwe, and landed in the newsrooms of Peru. You talk about a global movement.
Right. It's incredible. And, as diverse as their backgrounds are, their approaches, what they're focusing on. Right.
There's this thread, this undeniable thread of unity that connects them.
What is that thread? What ties all these stories together?
It's like they're all tapping into this shared energy.
Yeah.
This real sense of urgency. Like, we have to create a livable future.
Right.
And it's driven by their own experiences, sure.
Of course.
But also this deep understanding that the climate crisis, it doesn't care about borders.
It's global for sure.
Exactly. And they're not just sitting around, are they? These women are taking action.
Oh, absolutely not.
In some seriously innovative ways.
It's true. I mean, we were just talking about Nozinhle using music.
Yes.
But it's even bigger than that.
It goes way beyond. Think about, so many of them are harnessing social media.
Oh, for sure.
It's how they connect with each other.
Totally.
All over the world.
Right. Building these coalitions, sharing strategies, mobilizing support.
It's like their megaphone to the world.
It is. But it's not just about getting the word out.
Right.
They're using those platforms to hold people accountable.
Yeah. Putting the pressure on.
Exactly.
Yep.
World leaders, corporations, even their own communities.
Yeah.
Demanding action. Remember Helena Gualinga?
Oh, yeah.
What she said about green energy? That's what I'm talking about.
It's not enough to just slap a green label on things.
Exactly. They're asking the hard questions.
Digging deeper.
Demanding real change.
And that's where this whole ecocide thing comes in.
Right.
It's not just about like protecting the environment anymore.
It's bigger.
It's recognizing that destroying nature, that's a crime against humanity.
Exactly. And for these activists, this isn't just some legal theory. It's about a fundamental shift.
Yeah.
How we view our whole relationship with nature.
It makes you wonder, what would happen if ecocide was recognized? Like by international courts.
Right.
Would that change things?
That's the big question. And it speaks to how ambitious they are.
Oh, totally.
They're not thinking small. They want to change the whole system.
It's inspiring, but also kind of daunting, right? This is huge.
It is.
What can we as individuals even do?
Right. It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Totally.
But I think that's where their stories are so powerful.
How so?
They remind us that this isn't a fight we have to win on our own.
It's about coming together.
Yes. Collective action.
Finding our own ways to be a part of it.
Exactly. And for everyone, that might look different.
Right.
Maybe you join a local group or volunteer. Maybe it's talking to friends and family.
Raising awareness.
Exactly. It's about finding what feels right for you.
Yeah, your own way to make an impact.
And don't think those small actions don't matter.
I needed to hear that.
Every step counts. It all adds up.
Okay, feeling a bit more hopeful. But how do we actually do it? Like, we all know climate change is happening,
Right.
but how do we turn that into real change?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And I think the Climate Sisters offer some real wisdom on that,
Okay, I'm listening.
even if there's no easy answer.
So what can we learn from them? How are they doing it? I think it starts with their ability to make climate change feel personal and relatable.
You're absolutely right. They're weaving these compelling narratives, making the threat of climate change feel immediate. Like, this is happening now. Take Vanessa Hauc. She's using her platform to tell the stories of people,
Yes.
the people on the front lines, humanizing it all.
And it's not just about sharing stories of hardship.
Exactly.
It's about resilience, innovation.
the power of community action.
Right. Remember Nozinhle Gumede
Yeah.
using music to energize people,
To make climate action feel joyful, even.
make it feel accessible.
It's about meeting people where they are, finding those points of connection, making the fight for climate justice feel hopeful.
That's what I find so inspiring. They're not just fighting against something.
Right.
They're fighting for something, for a better future.
And they're inviting us to be a part of that.
Their stories, they're a reminder of the power of collective action, fueled by passion,
By creativity.
by a deep love for our planet.
It can make a difference.
So as we wrap this deep dive into Climate Sisters, resisting ecocide, I'm curious, what resonated most with you? Was it a story, a specific approach?
I'm always blown away by their determination. They're facing a global challenge, yet they approach it with hope and agency.
It's contagious.
It is. For me, it's how they connect the dots between individual action and systemic change.
Right.
Even small steps, when you multiply them across a global movement, they have a ripple effect.
It's true. So if there's one thing you take away from this, let it be this. You have a role to play.
Absolutely.
Find your lane, raise your voice. Let's build a better future together.